The beauty of TV over film is that we usually get a lot more time to invest ourselves in a series' characters, both the heroes and the villains. Yet villains don't always end up getting their just desserts. It's easy to lose sight of that fact due to the show downplaying it, or because the villains just quietly slid out of the picture when they knew they'd won. So let's dive in. This is What Culture, and here are TV villains you didn't realize actually won. Stan Valczyk, The Wire. It's clear in HBO's seminal crime drama series The Wire that nobody really wins. Life simply goes on, or as the case often might be, it doesn't. As such, definitive happy endings were in desperately short supply when the show came to a close. Yet there is one character whose ultimate success isn't mentioned enough, and that's Stan Valczyk, the commander of the Baltimore Police Department's Southeastern District. Nobody in the show proved quite as politically ruthless or hilariously petty as Valczyk while managing to emerge unscathed every single time. This is a man who ordered an investigation into corruption at the docks because of a disagreement about a stained glass window, causing a pile of dead bodies in the process. Valczyk played human chess better than anyone, and in the series finale even ended up promoted to the role of commissioner for all of his weasel work. While the fates of most other surviving characters were left ambiguous at best, there was no doubt that Valczyk would keep bounding upwards for the rest of his career. He came out more enriched and firmly positioned than anyone else in the show.
Miles Papazian, 24. As in real life, 24 proves that what we really need to be worried about isn't terrorism, but rather sociopathic ladder-climbing bureaucrats like Homeland Security's Miles Papazian. This thoroughly detestable human weasel appeared throughout the 5th season's second half, being sent to CTU after the office was ground zero for a nerve gas attack. Miles spends much of his time impeding the progress of Jack Bauer and those CTU employees, secretly helping him to uncover the full extent of President Logan's villainy. Once Bauer obtains a recording implicating Logan in the assassination of beloved former President David Palmer, Papazian immediately reveals this information to Logan, agreeing to destroy the recording if Logan grants him a position in his administration, which he does. Papazian indeed destroys said evidence, and though his actions are eventually revealed, he's never punished for his crime beyond getting a quick roughing up from Jack. Miles pieces out of CTU 2 episodes before the end of the season, and that's the last we ever see of him. Despite his actions having a major impact on the show's subsequent Logan-centric seasons, Papazian is never heard from again, and without any proof of him tampering with the recording, he surely got away scot-free, the scumbag.
Marco Fuentes, Dexter. The entire premise of Dexter is that the titular serial killer spends his time targeting and killing the scum of the earth, who he believes deserves to be wiped out. Yet there's one near victim who actually managed to escape justice and has been more or less forgotten about ever since, Marco Fuentes. Marco and his brother Carlos appeared in a single season 5 episode as a pair of serial killers responsible for at least 7 murders. Carlos ends up being killed when the police track them down, at which point Marco flees the scene. While the audience likely expects him to end up on Dexter's slab in due course, it just never happens. We never see Marco again, with the fair implication being that he was never brought to justice and was perhaps even able to resume his killings again. While several characters have managed to evade Dexter throughout the series, none have been given as little attention by fans as Marco, enough that it's reasonable to assume most have totally forgotten that he basically came out on top. Dexter has come to an end now, but as far as we know, Marco is still out there, living free.
David Acevedo, The Shield. The Shield boasts one of the most brilliantly uncompromising endings in TV history, with villain protagonist Vic Mackey escaping prison time but being confined to a soul-sucking desk job while alienating all of his friends and family. There is one lesser antagonist who basically got what they wanted all along though, and that's police captain turned politician David Acevedo. From the moment we meet him in the show's very first episode, it's plainly clear that he's an intensely ambitious opportunist, willing to get his hands extremely dirty if it can grant him political leverage. And despite turning a blind eye to so much corruption in his midst, the series finale implies that Acevedo is imminently due to become mayor. Between this and Acevedo helping cause the destruction of Vic's strike team, it's safe to say that he came off better than every other major character in the show, and seems unlikely to face any blowback for his shameless politicking. Yet the focus is so intently on Vic in the episode's closing scene. The Gaines Twins, Spider-Man the New Animated Series. Spider-Man the New Animated Series aired in 2003 as a continuation of Sam Raimi's live-action Spider-Man film released the year prior, and its single 13-episode season concluded with a shocking downer ending. In the final episode, the villainous Gaines Twins managed to get the better of Peter by tricking him into attacking his own girlfriend, Indira. This causes the tide of public opinion to turn massively against Spider-Man, prompting a guilt-riddled Peter to shove his costume into a suitcase and sink it to the bottom of the harbour. And that's it. The show never returned for a second season, and Raimi's Spider-Man 2 obviously went in a totally different creative direction, ensuring that in the weirdo parallel universe that this show exists within, Peter just gave up being Spider-Man. Even though the Gaines Twins themselves are left incapacitated and possibly dead by the end of the episode, they still did what no other supervillain could. They made Spider-Man do something so horrible that he quit, seemingly for good. That's a win for not just the twins, but Spidey's entire rogues gallery.
Gaius Baltar, Battlestar Galactica. Gaius Baltar surely seemed like he was on a collision course with his just desserts in the series' later seasons. The cowardly narcissist was to blame for the Cylons' genocide against the 12 colonies, his libido blinding him to number 6's duplicity, in turn making him responsible for at least 20 billion deaths. That's quite the ethical bar tab. It really just seemed like a given that Gaius would pay the mortal price for his sins, or, in the very least, get locked away for life at the end of his trial. But alas, Gaius is narrowly found not guilty, and even though the fallout leaves him with few allies, he nevertheless lands on his feet repeatedly in its wake. Gaius becomes a straight-up cult leader, and then, in the series finale, finds true peace by settling down and becoming a farmer with Caprica 6, finally embracing the profession held by his father. Gaius had such a brilliant character arc throughout the show that it's easy to downplay just how fortunate the guy was to slip out of the noose, avoid punishment for causing so much death, and then find genuine contentment. Look, he's not Paul Spector, The Fall. The Fall's antagonist is Paul Spector, a serial killer who is pursued by Detective Stella Gibson throughout the series. Spector is eventually arrested in the show's second season, which ends on a cliffhanger where he's shot, leaving his fate hanging in the balance. The third season reveals that Spector survived, yet in the series finale, upon learning an insanity plea is off the table, he decides to commit suicide by hanging himself in a manner similar to that of his mother's own demise. If this may seem like anything but a victory to Spector, it's worth considering that the man found a way to evade justice that he desperately deserved. If having Spector survive his brush with death in season 2 seemed like a clear indication that he'd stay alive to face his real punishment, this basically felt like Spector getting the last laugh, and sparing everyone touched by his crimes true closure.
Don Draper, Mad Men. Though Mad Men is absolutely a show beyond binary definitions of hero and villain, troubled protagonist Don Draper certainly gravitates more towards the latter than the former. While Don is far from unaware of the toxic nature of his actions throughout the series, it doesn't change the fact that he's a serial philanderer with abusive tendencies, typically towards women, and harbours little respect for anyone, even himself it seems. As such, many predicted that Mad Men's final episode would see Don finally complete his quest for self-destruction, perhaps even taking a leap from an office window as the Draper-esque figure does in the show's opening titles. But the show did something very unexpected instead, ending with Don finding apparent enlightenment at a spiritual retreat. Except that's not what really happens at all. The closing shot of Don smiling in apparent contentment is followed by a smash cut to Coca-Cola's legendary 1971 Hilltop commercial. Given that said commercial features figures not unlike those at the retreat, the implication is that Don did the most cynical thing imaginable, co-opting his experience at the retreat for one of the most successful pieces of marketing in the history of the world. It would be unfair though to suggest that Don took nothing genuine away from his experience at the retreat, so this was basically an ending that let its oft-despicable protagonist have his cake and eat it too.
Hannibal Lecter, Hannibal. The Hannibal series may have ended with the title character taking a tumble off a cliff with Will Graham, but let's be clear, the man accomplished everything he set out to do beforehand. Plus, they're totally not dead, right? Hannibal's entire goal was to have FBI investigator Graham come to understand him, and this was finally unambiguously achieved in the series finale when Hannibal and Graham teamed up to kill serial killer Francis Dollarhide. This is the moment that crystallized their unhinged, involving bond, and even if you assume that Hannibal died, the man and went out completely happy and at peace with his lot in life. But as the post-credits scene heavily implies that both men survived, it's an even more decisive victory for Lecter. Emotionally, he achieved everything he set out to do, and seemingly lived to savor it like one of his meals.
General Melchett, Blackadder goes forth. One of the primary villains of Blackadder's 4th series is General Melchett, an utterly incompetent warmonger whose pig-headed failure to grasp the realities of modern trench warfare makes him send countless men to their unnecessary deaths. Melchett saves the worst act for last in the series' final episode when he sends Captain Blackadder, Private Baldrick, Lieutenant George and Captain Darling over the top of the front line into a barrage of machine gun fire, seemingly causing their collective demise. Melchett, of course, recuses himself from taking part by dubbing himself, quote, an old general with a dicky heart and a wooden bladder, making him the only survivor of the series' main cast, and one whose careless stupidity receives no real comeuppance whatsoever. Depressingly, it's certainly a true-to-life outcome, and one that infuriatingly encapsulates the bitter, pointless loss of life en masse that was the First World War.
Chris Keller, Oz. HBO's legendary prison drama Oz is a show that had very few happy endings on offer, though it did basically hand a victory to psychopathic serial killer Chris Keller. Easy though it is for you to buy into this prison romance with protagonist Tobias Beecher, there's no denying that Keller is an emotionally manipulative abuser. Case in point, when Beecher is paroled in the 6th and final season, a lonely Keller arranges for Beecher to get caught buying drugs, thereby breaking his parole and causing him to get sent back to Oz. The season ends with Keller attempting to win back Beecher's favor, and upon realizing he won't ever be able to, he commits suicide, throwing himself off a balcony and staging it to frame Beecher for the act. In an ultimate feat of petty revenge, this ensures that Beecher will remain in jail for the foreseeable future. But Keller's posthumous vengeance quest doesn't stop just there. Keller also arranged for anthrax to be delivered to the mailroom, killing everyone in there and resulting in the prison's evacuation, which is implied to be permanent.
Helmut Zemo, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Because having Helmut Zemo triumph over the Avengers in Captain America Civil War wasn't good enough, he ended up doing it again in follow-up series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Zemo is reluctantly brought into the fold by Falcon and the Winter Soldier, who require his help to bring down the Flag Smashers, a group of anti-nationalist anarchists who have been enhanced by super soldier serum. After destroying many vials of the serum and killing its creator, Zemo is handed over to Wakanda's Dora Milaje in the season's penultimate episode, before being imprisoned in the raft. This might initially seem like a big L for Zemo, yet in the finale, his butler kills the remaining serum-enhanced Flag Smashers before they too can be imprisoned in the raft, leaving Zemo with a satisfied smirk on his face the last time we see him. Just as some refuse to admit that Zemo won in Civil War because he still ended up in the clink, the same is true here. He may be behind bars, but he once again completed his mission and impressively did so without any superpowers of his own.
Adelai Niska, Firefly. Now, in total fairness, Firefly's entire planned storytelling trajectory was thrown off by its cancellation after just 14 episodes. But all the same, the sci-fi western series' overarching villain never ended up getting his. We're talking, of course, about Adelai Niska, a violent, psychopathic crime boss with a penchant for torturing folks who cause him even the most minor of inconveniences. Though Niska only appeared in 2 of the series' episodes, he certainly made a distinct impression, even if his fate was left infuriatingly unresolved. In the 10th episode, War Stories, Niska targets Mal and his crew, and though Mal eventually manages to get free and attack Niska, Niska manages to slip away when his torturer intervenes. In the end of the episode, when Inara tells Mal, "I just wish you'd killed that old bastard," it certainly suggests that Joss Whedon intended to catch up with Niska later down the line, yet he's never seen again. And when Whedon got the opportunity to make a follow-up movie, Serenity, there wasn't even a passing mention of Niska's fate. Oh well. As such, it's fair to assume that Niska's still out there somewhere torturing people for the fun of it, totally unimpeded, while the crew of Serenity ended up losing 2 of its number, Wash and Buck. Talk about unfair.
War itself, MASH. MASH's iconic final episode, which remains the most watched TV episode in American history, details the final hours of the Korean War. Euphoric though this might sound in theory, true to the show's overarching ethos, it's hardly a dew-eyed going-away party for the crew. Yes, everyone is going home home and gets to say their fond farewells, but underneath this is the dread-soaked reminder of war's destructive cost on those who participate in it. Almost every single major character has suffered in some way for their part, not least Hawkeye going through a nervous breakdown. And of course, who can forget the dead chicken revelation, where a woman who apparently smothered her chicken to death to prevent the medical convoy being caught by an enemy patrol is revealed to have actually smothered her own child. Now, MASH's anti-war message is hardly subtle, but all the same, its triumphant final moments can't paper over the utter emotional hell these characters have been put through, forever changing them in the process.
Mandy, 24. Few TV characters have had as much explosive impact in as few episodes as 24's Mandy, who despite appearing in just 7 of the show's 200 plus episodes, effectively managed to outlast even Jack Bauer himself. In the show's first season, Mandy blew up a passenger plane, returned in season 2 to try and assassinate President Palmer, and then reappeared once more at the end of season 4, where she was eventually captured by Bauer. Though this is the last time Mandy has been seen on the show, it's important to remember that in exchange for revealing terrorist Habib Marwan's location, she was granted immunity by President Logan for all of her prior crimes. And so, almost 20 years after we last saw Mandy on screen, she remains a free and at-large villain, all while Jack Bauer continues to rot in a Russian prison. At least until Fox hopefully greenlights one more season to resolve Jack's arc. Please give us more Bauer, Fox.
John Kelly, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. In Brooklyn Nine-Nine's 6th season, Holt loses the NYPD commissioner gig to John Kelly, who proves to be a major thorn in the side of the 99th Precinct, and is subsequently revealed to be using an anonymous tip app to spy on the population. When this is brought to light at the end of the season, Kelly is suspended as commissioner and sent packing from the NYPD. A pretty concrete win for the good guys, right? Well, not quite. It's easy to gloss over this, but in one of the episode's closing scenes, interim commissioner Madeline Wunsch briefly tells Holt that Kelly has since gotten a much higher paying job in the private sector. Kelly isn't seen again, and so one can forget that such a dastardly character is still out there, flourishing in his new, better paying position, failing upwards, as is so maddeningly true to life.
The Carver, Nip Tuck. In the early 2000s, there were few TV storylines more gripping than the mystery of Nip Tuck's Carver, a masked serial rapist who mutilates the faces of their victims. The show's 3rd season centered around the investigation into the Carver's identity, culminating in the revelation that the culprit was plastic surgeon Dr. Quentin Costa, working with his sister lover Kit McGraw. The season ends with Quentin and Kit escaping justice and fleeing to Spain, where it's implied they will continue their rampage. And yet, with Nip Tuck going on for 3 further increasingly ridiculous seasons, it's easy to forget that the Carver is still at large and presumably still doing his thing when the show comes to an end. Sure, it's tough to believe that Quentin and Kit could just keep attacking people all while their identities are known to the world, yet there's no suggestion at all that they were either caught or gave up their grim side hustle.
Diana, V, 1984. Classic 80s sci-fi series V depicts the arrival of an alien species on Earth called the Visitors, who, it turns out, are reptilian humanoids aiming to conquer the planet. V's primary villain is the Visitors' second-in-command, Diana, and the last time we see her at the end of the 1984 to 1985 series, she's been captured after attempting to stage a coup among the Visitors and destroy Earth. The show was cancelled after this episode was produced, meaning that the planned finale, The Attack, was never fully filmed. This episode wouldn't have merely left Diana in custody though. She was set to escape, and 2008 sequel novel V the Second Generation subsequently revealed that Diana eventually ascended to the level of all-powerful Supreme Commander within the Visitors. Though the series unfortunately left Diana in limbo, canonically speaking, she only became more powerful afterwards, even if we never got to see it realized on screen.